Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID. You are in the meeting now. There are three participants in the meeting.
Right now you're muted, so if you unmute yourself.
Good morning, Vanessa. Are you here?
I'm here. Sorry about that. Yes.
No,
If for some,
just testing the sound.
oh, got it. Okay. I was trying to hit my unmute and it wasn't working. Sorry about that. Yes, I'm here.
Good.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Susanna.
Hello, good morning.
You're muted.
Yeah, well, I wasn't talking yet.
Still muted.
No, you can't hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
I can hear you too, Suzanne. I can hear you both. You're good.
Do you want to hear me, Jack? That's the question.
Always, Susanna.
Yeah, we'll go offline and talk about that.
Right?
Careful, careful.
How is everyone today?
Excellent.
Good, me too.
Hey guys, it's Cindy Swisher. I'm trying this for the first time. Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, hi Cindy.
You're good, Cindy.
Oh, okay. I won't talk anymore, I promise.
Oh,
We have that on recording, Cindy, that you won't talk anymore, just so you know.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Busted.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year,
Back
Happy New
Susanna.
Year.
Everybody else.
Yeah, hoping that this is going to be a much better year for everyone on the globe.
Here, here. Well, it is 10 o'clock and I do believe we have a quorum. So on that note, I will call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mary
I'll
Ann.
second this is Diana.
No, I think that was Mary Ann and Diana simultaneously.
Mm.
So,
Diana can have it.
Whatever works.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Brian was muted, but I saw his mouth move.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm assuming it was because he was in favor of it, not opposed. Thank you. So the very first item on our agenda is as a result of me. So I'm going to read something because it's a little easier for me to make sure I stay on task. So I'm going to ask for everybody just a little liberty with this particular conversation as we move forward. I am going to ask whoever is on needs to be muted because it keeps on cutting in and out. First, Celebration is a unique and beautiful place to live. We wave to our neighbors from our front porch as we take our walks. We see them in local restaurants. We see them at Publix and we shop. We agree on issues just as often as we disagree. But here in Celebration, neighbors are first, and they always come together when it really matters. My fellow board members work really hard with balancing their personal life, professional careers, committee liaison commitments, workshops, board meetings, appeals meetings, and most importantly, just responding to residents who have questions and concerns and suggestions. These conversations occur often via phone, email, while taking a leisurely walk, while sitting at restaurants, while enjoying a morning at the golf course. You know, the CROA board of director position, although it's volunteer, just requires an extensive amount of personal time and energy far beyond what the general celebration population will ever understand. It's truly 10,000 residents to 7 board members. And when you have somebody who has to step back and resign, it leaves that much more work for everybody else. And because I understand how hard it is to do your best as a board member and still do your fair share of the job, I feel very badly for my decision to step back as president. I'll remain on the board because we often struggle to find a quorum for important meetings. And there's really only 2 months left of my term. The decision really didn't come lightly for me. While at vacation on Vero Beach over the holiday break, my husband suffered a heart attack. He exercises regularly, visits his doctors for annual exams, had no history of any heart or health issues. We're still caught in a blur of disbelief. 100% of my focus is now on my family. We're blessed to be given a wake-up call of our priorities. I apologize to my fellow board members, management, staff, and neighbors for the abrupt disconnect, but I truly appreciate your compassion and support as I focus my time and energy away from celebration. At this time, David Anderson, as Vice President, has been acting president on behalf of the board. With the organization meeting for the next board occurring on Friday, March 5th, per the bylaws, the current board needs to select a new president. David has expressed a willingness to continue as president for the remainder of the term. Does anybody have a motion for who would like to take over as president? Do I have a motion? Somebody's on mute, board members.
I'll be happy to make a motion that David fill the role of president and that the board accept your stepping down as president. And I'd also add to the motion that we thank you very much for your 10 months of efforts on behalf of the board in your role as president.
Thank you, Brian. Do I have a second?
I'll be happy to second that motion.
Thank you, Diana. Any conversation or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then on that note, David, I'll turn this meeting over to you as president, and the first order of business needs to be nominating a vice president because we still need to make sure we have all the officer position filled.
Yes.
I'll actually make a motion. Diana, I don't want to throw you under the bus on this one, so if it's not going to work for you, I would actually like to nominate Diana as vice president. I don't know that there's anybody else. Is Kevin on here? Well, he's already secretary. So, so Diana, a motion to nominate or to select Diana as vice president.
I second.
And I know it's not in order, but I would third that.
Thank you.
Does that mean she gets a raise in pay?
Just like the rest of us.
It goes up by 50%. I can attest to that.
Oh, looking forward to that. Thank you.
Don't hold your breath.
So David, I guess you can call the vote.
So let's call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Congratulations, Diana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And on that note, David, you are officially running the meeting.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate Vanessa. I appreciate you a lot. And I appreciate you're doing the right thing. This is so hard, and bless you and your family during these times. And I don't apologize for my emotions because your opening statement is exactly how most of us feel about living here. So thank you for your service. Thank you for being you. Thank you for continuing to serve the next couple of months. I know it'll be hard.
Thank you, Vanessa.
I know we all have a lot more to say, and the feeling, you know, runs very deep. I think the other part of this discussion on this first agenda item is other committee responsibilities. So we have I mean, each of us has stepped forward. With a board of 6, we've had to cover. So now the question is, how do we cover the committees as we look forward to the next 2 months? Any thoughts on that from the board? Vanessa was the liaison for ARC.
Correct. I think we've got 2 more meetings for ARC. If we are able to have somebody else step in that role, that would be great. If not, I will do my best to continue on. I know we have lots of very important issues going on right now with ARC. So it really does need our due diligence on it.
So ARC, it's a liaison role.
Tell you what, David, let's cut to the chase. I'll be happy to work side by side with Vanessa on the ARC. I was going to go with the January one anyway. Then we got February, which is 1 month, and then we'll roll forward.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Your plate is already overflowing. Any others, Vanessa, that are important to highlight?
I think that the ARC was the one that needed the biggest. So Brian and I working together on that would be helpful, because we've actually bounced lots of different ideas off of each other. So he knows a lot of things that are going on. I think the other thing is the Recreation Committee. But I think right now there's nothing, from what I recall, there's nothing huge. Nikki, if there's anything in there recreation wise that you need somebody to step in prior to the end of, or prior to new board of directors being elected?
So Nikki couldn't make it in today. But as far as I know, no, because she got the program partners contract signed, and a lot of them aren't starting till February anyway or later. So I think we're good. But if she needs something, we'll be sure to reach out.
So how about if we just leave it alone then, David, and I'll just stay there. If we're on mute, if we're on hold on that anyway, then if I'm needed, I can step in.
That's fine. And the other part is I can step in, just like Brian, I can step in. I'm happy to step in if there's a need, if there's a meeting, so forth.
Very good.
So just mark that, if you would, Susanna, for those meetings. And I think the others are already covered. I've been covering dog park and special events. I think that basically has it. So is there anything else from other board members in terms of leadership and committees before we move on to the brief updates? Okay. Hearing none, let's go to the brief updates. Just in terms of organization, our big discussion item is the CCFC and capital improvements. And then we have a medium discussion item on the election update, but the others are fairly brief. So let's just see. Well, and also the upcoming meetings and topics, we have a bunch that we need to decide what are we going to do the rest of this month, and then in February in terms of workshops. So let's deal with the first one, facilities reopening update. The board did receive a note from Nikki. I think it was yesterday, or maybe it was part of the packet.
It's part of the packet.
Yeah, and so that was whenever that was sent out. So we do have that update.
Yes, so speaking on behalf of Nikki today, there were no concerns to be brought forward to the board as far as the parks and facilities and the sports. She did want to mention that the CCFC grass fields have been recently seeded with rye. You can see from the pictures what an improvement that is. It helps during the winter time to make it look nicer for everyone out there. If you have any specific questions about how that's done, Mike can help. I think the real topic that she wanted to bring up today is that the Recreation Committee motioned to recommend an increase on the capacity of each field. And the reason, right now there are 30 participants per field. And so because of that, the different groups have expressed how long it's taking them to get through their games. And so what they wanted to do was divide the field in half and have like 30 on each, so it's a total of 60. There was also mentioned about how, Lakeside currently has their capacity up to 79, which is much more than the field, which is, larger. And so that recommendation was made to the board to see if they would approve increasing the capacity to 60 participants per field, totaling 180 in the complex.
A motion to approve the
Vanessa made the
recommendation.
motion to approve.
And I'll
Approve the
second,
recommendation.
I'll second it.
Can you do an interpretation of that in terms of how many participants could be on a field at any one time? Does that change the net closeness of people or not?
Well, I mean, there's no set capacity for all those fields, outdoor fields. There's no, number that's been designated by the county. But JR can speak to how many people we've had at the events, but obviously it's been, hundreds. So, obviously it's a little bit different when people are playing sports and more in direct contact. But the committee looked at it and, so it would be divided in half and 30 would be on one side and 30 on the other. That's up to the board.
If I could jump in here, Suzanne, I've also talked with John Trout and some others, and one of the things you got going on here is, you don't have 30 kids, you have about 5 coaches, you got coaching going on and stuff like that. So they're trying to get it to a manageable size to actually have better instruction and better interaction of just not physical sports like roughhousing each other, wrestling or something like that, but just, passing drills, catching drills and stuff like that. So and I have talked with John a couple times. So this is really around, they've learned in a COVID world as the rest of us how to manage the size of the field, and the soccer fields are actually out there quite big. So you divide one in half, you can still stick 5 kids in one corner, 5 kids in another corner, 5 kids in the third, and 5 kids in the fourth, and have 4 or 5 coaches on each side and have a lot of distancing, but it allows more kids to participate, which is really the goal here. Is it's better for the youth to be out playing organized sports than doing nothing. So that's the genesis of this.
Yeah, Brian, that's very helpful. My main concern is in this era of the virus and the mutation of the virus and more vulnerability and the caseloads going up, making sure our exposure stays low. And what you've just described, I think, helps to accomplish that. I mean, it doesn't affect that from what I'm hearing. You're talking about a lot of drilling, if you will.
Right, and that is what I understand from both of them. Again, I've had, as Vanessa said during her speech, we get our phone calls, and I've had phone calls with all the people, and that is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about chaos. We're talking about organized instruction is what they're achieving to pull off here.
Okay.
Which is why I'm coming with my second.
Okay, thank you. Diana or Mary Ann? Diana's shaking her head like nothing more to offer. Okay, that is correct. And Mary Ann's saying nothing more to offer. Okay, shall we call the vote on this? We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation from the recommendation from the Recreation Committee. Whatever.
Take the vote.
Take the vote. All in favor? Let's just go do by name. Vanessa.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Mary Ann.
Yes.
Diana.
Yes.
And I'll be a yes. So, and is Kevin on? I don't see Kevin. Okay, so that's unanimous. Vote is 5-0. Anything else under facilities reopening update?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Susanna. Community standards, lights and signs. I think Jessica was going to brief us on that. Is she on? I see. Yes, I see.
Hi there. I
There you
am
are. There you
sorry,
are.
trying to get my video going here. Thank you. This is something that Susanna briefly touched on last month, and so I'm following up on that. It's regarding, we see the Celebration Foundation heart signs kind of spread throughout the community. There was also lights that we were allowing, blue and red lights, in support of all that was going on. And so the board had instructed us to allow those past the holiday season. And so now we're here just to follow up and see if the board at this time would ask us to continue allowing those, or is it a good time to start asking for removal of those items?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we've deferred this a couple of times. I think it was initially in August and then we deferred it. And so my first reaction is, again, with the signs, I would hate to pass a message to take down the signs because the pandemic continues, and the support of our healthcare and this, if you will, small token of resident support of healthcare workers, I think is important. So I, for one, am prepared to continue the signs. I don't know if there's a difference with the lights, but I'll be interested in how other board members feel on this. Brian?
I don't have an issue with the signs right now. To your point, there is still a pandemic going on. Mary Ann just chimed in to continue with the signs on her text. So thank you, Mary Ann. I have no issues with this. I don't know, Brian.
I don't have a problem with the signs, but we had also expanded this to allow like early Christmas lights and stuff like that. I mean, my neighbors got all the Christmas lights out and it's post-Christmas. I would like to see the lights go down, keep the signs, doesn't bother me at all, but you know, it's time for the holidays to end and to move on, and the sign is fine.
That's how I come out on this. So
I guess to move this along, I motion to allow the signs to continue through the month of February, just so we can at least delay this. So you know, that way the new board can address it. So that the rules with regards to our holiday lights be enforced as per our guidelines. That's my motion.
Awesome.
I'll second that.
Vanessa, since the new board doesn't come in until, I don't know, the end of the first week of March, would you be willing to amend your motion to say the end of March, so it gives the board some time?
Sorry, I guess I should unmute myself. To be resumed or to be addressed by new board. I think at the next board meeting, when the new board takes over.
Okay, so as an action item in March by the new board. So is that acceptable, Diana, as a?
Yeah, that's fine. That'll give the new board a chance to look at it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call the question. Brian?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. I think that's all. Okay, so motion passes for the signs to continue. For the, it's the Celebration Heart signs from the Celebration Foundation. Next item is election update, candidates and timeline. Just as a point of information, I have not, I know there's, Vanessa assigned a group of non-running board members to address this. I know there's been some email floating among the board. Just as point of information, I'm not looking at any of those. So just in terms of ethics, I have not looked at any of those. And so if there is any voting, I will recuse myself from that.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to one of those committee members. That would be Brian.
Brian and Diana and Kevin were the three people.
Okay.
Diana and I met for coffee, put together notes. This election timeline is not what we had put together, but that's all right. We didn't give it for this. I'll go first, Diana, and you can jump in second if you don't mind. So our recommendation, and by the way, we didn't say it up front, David, but we do take public comments when we discuss items. So if public comment on the list, they can. The recommendation is, this is a weird year. We got COVID. And Diana and I and Kevin thinking about it, you know, really thought about, okay, we used to have the forums, you know, they would be recorded, they'd be online and stuff like that. And we really think in a COVID year, that's very hard to manage. So our recommendation that we had sent to the board was that, you know, the candidate deadline was January 5th. We have 8 candidates, of which David Anderson is one. He's rerunning. The polls open February 1st. The polls close March 2nd. The annual meeting is March 3rd, and the organizational meeting is March 5th. We would ask that Neil set up an orientation meeting roughly January 15th or something like that, but we need Neil to organize that. At that meeting would be Diana, myself, and Kevin as the 3 non-running board members, along with Neil, to do the orientation session. Then what we are recommending is that we have put together a listing of 6 questions. The only people at this time that have seen those 6 questions are Diana and Kevin and myself. We would send it to the rest of the board members and management now so that we can finalize the questions. We have an election site on the website, and we would ask each candidate to answer those 6 questions in up to 3 pages total. So they could take a half a page for all 6 questions, or they could do one quick and one longer. And then we would ask each candidate to provide a 15-minute video. They can, some people like Jackson Mummy is running, likes to do the phone videos and does it himself, and he could submit that, no problem. Someone else may want help with the video, and we would make up to 1 hour of JR or Patrick's time available to help each candidate to make that 15-minute video. But then what would happen is we want that posted, that video and the answers to those questions, by February 1st. So that, because one of the problems I've always thought with the forums, if you had one in the middle of February and one in the end, people vote early anyway. So by February 1st, we want the video if they're going to post one, and the answer to the questions if they're going to provide it. We'll go over this with the orientation with everybody. And then all the residents in the town, we will send regular Friday flashes, email blasts and stuff like that, so they can be linked right to that, so they can see the 8 candidates, they can see their answers to the questions and the video and that type of stuff. And that would be the process we're recommending this year. And then, we've had the old process. Really, I think I'll let Diana speak in 1 second. We actually thought this might be an interesting new process. And afterwards, we actually evaluate the pros and cons of the old and the new, and do we create a hybrid or something for the future. This is our recommendation. Diana, please add anything you'd like to add.
I think one of the things, thank you, Brian, but I think one of the things that we talked about that residents will be able to see the initial profile, which was sent out. And then if they want to know more information about that candidate, then they can delve deeper into the 5 questions. And if they want to watch the video to get to know them, we think it's actually kind of giving every resident's going to want a different amount of information about the candidates they vote for. And this kind of gives them 3 different things. It gives them the initial resume or application, the questions, and then the video. I know all of them have published their emails as well, or will publish their emails. So if there's any interaction that a resident wants to make personally with them, I think that's always possible. But I think the one thing that we would ask from Paul is to highly publicize the link to get to the profiles, get to the questions, and get to the videos. So there's no question as to where they can find the information once the ballots go out.
And the one thing I would add is the 6 questions, like I said, no one's seen them, but except Diana, myself, and Kevin, are not easy questions. We all know some of the very complicated issues coming up. I'll give you a hint. RFP's in there as an example, and a couple of things like that. So we've asked 6 very poignant questions, which people will learn a lot. And then the video does not have to address those questions. The video can actually complement the questions and deal with other qualifications or things, or anything that the individual wants to say about themselves. Because one of the things Diana and I talked about is sometimes people will look at 8 candidates and say, well, I know I'm voting for those 2 people, and I'm not going to vote for those 2 people. And these 4 people are interesting. So how do I really understand those 4? They'll take the time to read a 3-page document and watch a 15-minute video and say, I'm really narrowing in on these 2. So that's our recommendation, David.
Thank you.
Can I, since I'm not running, can I just chime in with a couple of things as feedback? I did receive an email from Eileen Barr regarding her concerns about not doing the official candidate forum. So I do want to make sure that everybody is aware that that we did receive that concern. I'm actually going to flip on this. One of the biggest disadvantages with the candidate forums is the person who's answering first is the one that either gets the benefit, right? Because they happen to have a good answer, and then everybody else kind of falls in line, or they get kind of sideswiped because they don't have an answer, especially if it's somebody that hasn't been involved in celebration leadership. So I actually really like the fact that you have those 6 questions and everybody is going to be receiving the exact questions and nobody's going to know what anybody else says. So they truly will be independent responses. And if they don't understand something, it provides them an opportunity to do some research and establish some type of an opinion about it, rather than getting sidelined and not having a fair even play. So I actually like that about what you've done. So I think that as a somebody that helped last year in establishing the process and has participated and has done the forums and everything, I actually really like this, especially in the days of COVID. I think it just adds for an extra layer to be built upon. So thank you all.
And we actually had that specific conversation, Diane, when we were having coffee. And there will be a hard stop, like February 1st, where we're going to say you get it in on, or maybe it's January 31st, because voting starts on the 1st, if I remember it. You got to have it in on time, or it's not going to be posted, you know. So we believe, Diane and I joked about who went first last year, and it was always easier to go last and find that thing to add. So agreed.
And just for thank you, Marianne did respond that she agrees with Diane and Marianne's plan also, and she's not running again, so she has little insight that was in her text box. So well done and thank you.
Brian, if I may, you made a comment that you have 6 questions that you would then circulate to the board. Would you just please circulate it to the other 2 board members that were not part of your planning group and make sure that I am excluded from that?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the reason we're having this conversation and we keep saying Diana and Brian and Kevin only is because we didn't know if Vanessa was going to run. Right. You know, there was a change in her life she just talked about, which may have affected that decision. You know, Marianne and David both could have ran too. So we were waiting, and David will be treated 100% equal with every other candidate running, and will have access to nothing that other people don't have in the same time frame.
Absolutely. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
So what I asked David is that we need a board. I guess we can ask if there's public comment first. We probably should do that. And then we need the board to say, this is a plan, yes or no.
Right. The other thing I would just ask Neil, in terms of just so that it's publicly aware, what is the process? Brian mentioned voting starts February 1st. How are residents notified about their ability to vote? What is, I mean, I know the answer, but what can you talk about what the process is?
Sure, David. And first, by the way, Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to see all of you. So really, any sort of voting, or in this case, David, somebody's inability to vote is determined by Florida State Statute 720. Those individuals who, for whatever reason, may fall into a criteria in which they may not be eligible right now will receive written notification, and they will be given a cure period so that hopefully they can remedy and then vote. So those individuals will be notified separately. There's, you know, we don't name and shame. So and then obviously people will receive emails. So those who have not registered an email address on their private file here in Town Hall, please do so that you get those links so that you're able to vote for your representatives. And of course, JR will market and advertise this so much that I'm sure most of the community is going to be sick of it by the time we get to March 2nd anyway. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for people who may fall into that criteria to remedy so that they can cast their vote to have their candidates represent them.
So 2 follow-ons. Those who are eligible to vote are homeowners.
Correct.
And it's 1 vote per home.
Correct.
So if you have a spouse or others in the home, it's 1, and when I say 1 vote, it's 1 ballot with 4 votes. And the others, you're talking about electronic. Is there anything in the mail?
I'll need to get with JR, but I believe, and I apologize in advance, I don't believe we can prevent anybody if they want to cast a physical ballot from doing so. And so I'll work with JR to make sure that we're we're honoring state law and our homeowners' requests that do want to go that route. I'd also add, David and board and homeowners that are listening, in addition to what David said with respect to, you get 1 vote per lot. You don't get 2 ballots or 5 ballots, depending on your household. You also are not allowed to vote cumulatively, meaning you must vote for 4 candidates, not cast 4 votes for 1 candidate. So there's no cumulative voting, and it's 1 vote per lot.
You
Oh,
actually,
sorry, one ballot per lot. I'm sorry.
you get 1 ballot. They can't vote for 1 person more than once. They could vote for
Correct.
1 person, 2, 3, or 4 in this case.
Right, but there's no cumulative voting, meaning you can't cast 4 votes for 1 candidate. So that's a very unique thing that people will ask, but inevitably every year it comes up. So that'll be outlined in the correspondence that JR sends out as well.
Can I ask a quick clarification? In the past, there's actually been ballots proactively sent to every homeowner.
Yes, those go out January 29th.
Thank you. Okay. So, and in that will include the profiles and all that has been done in the past, correct? I'm trying to remember exactly what was included in the packet.
It'll be like it was previously.
Okay, perfect.
And
Thank
for
you.
the-
Yeah.
And I will add, people can vote by any mechanism that they're allowed legally. I personally encourage people to vote via email and the link that they're going to get, because we have a third-party independent organization who is going to obviously document and validate. And the reason that's important, because that third-party organization, it's triple blind. I won't see the results as they're happening. Nobody in town hall will see it. None of the board members can see it. And we won't be given any of those results until right before the annual meeting. So for those that are concerned about ballot integrity, by voting online, we're allowing a third-party organization to pretty much have a checks and balances against any sort of internal concerns about how ballots may be reviewed, received, and or steering. That's the biggest reason. We want to avoid steering or perceived steering.
And I will add to that, the election laws are very strictly set by Florida law, including an envelope, signatures, putting in another envelope, how that one is signed and where. Paper ballots end up having a lot of issues sometimes where they get disqualified just because of it is safer online for that reason.
A quick clarification or question. We have not received assessments from any developer yet, correct? My reason for asking is if they have not paid assessments to the association, they therefore do not have the right to vote yet. Is that an accurate statement?
Vanessa, yes, that is correct. If we have any developers at present who have platted any lots and their assessments have not been paid, then they are not allowed to legally vote, unless of course they were extended declarant privileges, but that's not happened with, I think, the situation I think you're talking about.
Okay, so just to be clear, and we have and there is no plan. Their voting, should they pay, would then be enacted. But to Jack's comment, we revised the charter to help cover for that, which Eileen and Jack are both aware of because they were both on the charter review. But we just probably, as a board, we just want and as management, just follow up to make sure that we fall in line with that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And Jack also had a clarification. This is one ballot per unit.
Correct.
Per homeowner unit, not per lot, per unit.
My apologies.
So that's okay. So just to be clear. And then the other piece is for those hand ballots, how are those scored? I know that how are those tallied? In the past, there was a committee set up here. Is that
Right,
going to be the
so-
same, or is that tied into the third party, or how does that work?
Well, so as we all know, PJ took that on for so many years. And so it's up to the board to appoint someone to do the ballot counting. We can reach out to her, or that's the board's decision.
So just to be clear, is she not available to do it, or she is available?
I haven't asked her to. I know that there's maybe been some events in her life recently, so we weren't really sure. We were going to ask you how you wanted to go about that this year, as far as.
I think what we probably should say publicly is there have been events and there could be transition events. So we need to have a conversation with PJ, but we need to have a conversation about how we think about transition and getting other people up to speed, Vanessa.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So we can do that.
So
through email?
Vanessa, who's going to do that? Vanessa, Brian?
I think it should be the people that are actually on the committee. That's
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I can help out because I'm
How
not
about
participating in
Diana,
it, but
Diana, in her, as maybe one of her first acts as vice president.
I'll be glad to call PJ.
Thank you. And
And
Jack,
David?
and then you and Brian and Kevin, as that committee could talk through what that might look like, bringing someone else up to speed, whatever that hand counting process. She's managed it very, very, very well in as many years as I've watched her do that.
and just as a side note, if for some reason she is unavailable, we can reach out to those others that have been heavily involved in
Yes.
PJ. She may be able to actually make a recommendation
Right.
as to who can help. I know that Debbie Jackson helped a lot. I know Eileen Barr's been involved in it. So there's been several people that have been involved in it for a period of time. And David, just in case you missed it, there is somebody that would like to speak from the public too. Okay.
I'm just going to move it. I see the phone number 9806. Let's. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi, it's Jerry Barr.
Hi, Jerry.
That's me. Hi. A couple of comments. One, we recently had an election in Artisan Park. We did have a Zoom candidates forum, and it did work quite well, and many of the residents got some very good information. By the same token, the plan that you have sounds very cogent and very good. The second point that I'd like to make is we made a tremendous push to get email addresses, and we had 51% of the people that could vote did vote in Artisan Park, which is a tremendous percentage out of the 616 units. And the third point, so I think CROA in general should try and reach out in as many ways as possible to try and over the period of the next year to assemble as many email addresses as we can get. And the last point I'd like to make is having run a lot of classes and attended a lot of classes, etc., a 15-minute video is quite long. And when people have that much time, sometimes they just talk too much. And I would suggest, I think having the video is a great idea, having it somewhat shorter. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Jerry, I'll just make a comment. They can use up to 15 minutes. It can be 1 minute, it can be 15 minutes. So we will leave that into their hands.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
I will say I watched 2 videos this morning and they were both 5-minute videos that my guys, these are logs. It's a fair question, I guess, Diana. Do we want to allow 15 minutes or do we want to allow up to 10? Is it worth challenging or not challenging? What do you think?
I guess I'm fine either way. I mean, 15 minutes is a long time, and that would be talking a lot about them. I mean, I guess maybe we can just encourage them to be concise and direct. Do we want to take it down to no more than 10 minutes?
David, you're going to be doing a video. What do you think? Is that fair?
All right, David, 10 minutes. I say we have to give David only up to 10 minutes.
At the candidate forum, I'll tell you, the opening statements at the candidate forums of 3 minutes goes doggone quickly. I mean, 3 minutes is short. 10 minutes is fine. 10, I mean, whatever you say.
I think as long as we're consistent, everyone has the same opportunity. That's fine.
That's
If 15 minutes does seem like a long time.
To me, the challenge is when you say up to 15 minutes, people want to fill the 15 minutes.
Yeah, we know how. Let's change it to up to 10 minutes. I think that's a good recommendation.
We have a hand up. Joseph, could you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, could you please, since it's new for this year, could you comment on the change in the term limits that have been put in?
Yes. Oh, I'll do it. Brian, did you want to jump in there? Or?
Actually, the term limits change was in place last year. It's the term now for each director is 3 years. In the case of this situation, last year, Diana and Brian Kinsel both got elected for 3 years, and Kevin Kirby and Debbie McDonald got elected for 2 years. And then in all future, and that was done to create a staggering of 2, 2, and 3 directors so that there would always be a couple of open positions. Debbie McDonald stepped down for medical reasons, as was indicated earlier this year. So we have 4 positions right now. 3 of them will be for 3 years, and the remaining term of Debbie's position will be for 1 year, and then that person will be eligible for re-election after that 1 year if they choose to run.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, Joseph, the other part of the change is that people can run twice in their, if you will, their lifetime. The clock started last year. So people can run twice. It's 2 3-year terms over the course of your lifetime. And that's different than it used to be. It used to be 2 2-year terms consecutive. So you could not run for a 5th year or 5th and 6th year. So the clock restarted to 0 for everybody last March.
So could we take a vote, David, so we can roll forward?
Yep. Okay, so who made the motion? Do you want to make a formal motion, please? Just to adopt what you've just, the plan?
Okay, I will make a motion that we go with the plan of having Neil organize the orientation session in the middle of January, sooner rather than later, if at all possible. We will then have each candidate open 6 questions, answer 6 questions to be provided to them no later than that orientation session. And each candidate will be allowed to video up to a 10-minute video that will also be posted by February 1st. And all answers to questions and videos must be provided before February 1st so they can be posted. And then there's fairness to all candidates. Diana, can you
I'll second that since I helped develop it.
Since you helped develop it, great. All right, any further discussion from the board? Any discussion from the people in attendance? Let's call the vote. Brian?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
And I'm just gonna not vote on this just to be clean. So, but we have a majority of the 6 present, so the motion passes. So I'm abstaining. The next action item is, or discussion item, I'm sorry, is annual meeting overview. We have the annual meeting. Neil highlighted that. It's the first Wednesday of March. And so it's, but just to talk about what does that look like? What is our thinking about annual meeting? I know what we've done in the past. It's been a great gathering. JR has been behind that, helping to orchestrate things, a great pre-meeting, if you will, resident interaction with one another with some goodies. But what is the thinking this year? And I don't know, I have not been part of any discussion to this point. I don't think we've talked about it as a board to this point, but any thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is the first time it's come up that we've started to talk about it. You know, I hate to lose the annual meeting completely. I think we need to talk about alternative suggestions. I mean, we need to do something. I don't think it's a good time to be getting groups together. I don't think we can do that unless we maybe do it way outside in the ball fields or something. But I'm open to suggestions.
This is Marianne. I agree with you, Diana, that we need to come up with some sort of a hybrid experience. I think the ball fields is a very interesting thought. I think we need to be creative. I know that my company and many others that I deal with are doing this for their annual meetings. They're creating a bit of a hybrid environment where people can attend via Zoom, and a smaller number of people based on the venue and, you know, keeping capacities within the recommended guidelines. That they're keeping the in-person piece very, very limited, but creating a hybrid event so that it just has a little bit more of the kind of feel you want around your annual meeting. So I would think we could get a little bit creative somehow, and it'll just look very different.
Okay.
That's the end of my 2 cents.
I can chime in. I don't have an issue with doing a hybrid. I'm not sure of how many people would get involved in it. But I'm also fine with just doing a standard Zoom meeting. I know that sounds very basic and generic. But I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or another. But I do know that we will rely a lot upon management to put it together and to become creative and clever about it. But like I said, I'm fine with just having something basic and on Zoom. I do like Joseph's suggestion. You know, how can we do this at CCFC? The challenge with that is weather, and I think that when you have an annual meeting like that, you don't want to put yourself out there with with something to have to be rescheduled or moved or something like that. So that's just my 2 cents.
I really only think you have two alternatives. You do a Zoom meeting, or you could go out to the fields. But having been to and I went to all the concerts at the fields and they were wonderful, but that takes a lot of work to set it up. Are you really going to get more than 40 people to come out there when you ask management to spend all that time setting it up? You disrupt all the practices and stuff like that. I would question if a better alternative would be to either have a Zoom meeting, or you could just say, we're not going to have an annual meeting. Here are your new board of directors, and we're going to do an annual meeting in May when the new board has been in effect for 6 weeks, and have the new board talk about, there will be plenty of things to talk about with the CCFC changes, with the RFP and other things like that. Right now we're in COVID, people are getting their shots. If you buy a little time, I think you buy yourself a little flexibility. My vote would be probably do it in May and make it, we could still bring the old directors, thank them very much for their service and everything, but in a weird year, we take a different approach.
You know, I actually, I was just looking that Jack had said, maybe do it in conjunction with Founders Day. That's an interesting twist, because your board of directors now, they're 3-year terms. So you have boards you'll have a board that's going to be together for a longer period of time. I actually think that's a very great idea.
Especially
I agree.
year. I would have no problem with that at all.
Or another two related thoughts. One is to look at our charter and what is required there, because I believe a annual meeting is required. I don't know that there's any further specification of that. And if we look at what we've done in the past, a lot of it is one way, meaning one-way communication. We have a great video that has been done historically. We've had reports from different committees honoring certain people. And then I think last year we morphed that into a town hall type thing. I think that was one of Kevin's. Kevin is now online, but that was one of Kevin's initiatives in the past. So that's one thought, is to maintain the March annual meeting, but I also applaud what Jack has suggested, doing something in conjunction with Founders Day. So it could be a semi-annual meeting or a different kind of piece with the new board of 7. So just some other thoughts. Kevin, welcome this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I had a meeting earlier that just ran a bit later than I intended. But no, Jack is correct there. And of course, Neil can go ahead and answer further, but we are required to at least hold it. So if that means it's just a Zoom board, call up and hang up, because unfortunately that's just the reality in majority of the HOAs in Florida, we would have to do that. The event side and the special event area is going to be a different approach. I would toss it, and I'm sorry I came in late to this, but I would just toss it to the special events committee and see what they suggest.
Here's another thought, and a lot in our landscape, with COVID is changing. Vaccines are out, more are coming. The world of inoculation will be different in the fall, meaning many more people will be vaccinated. So we will have a different environment in 8 months. I think that's, 8 or 10 months. So anyway, so we might consider doing something this spring. And also, I think with most of these, we've recorded a lot. And so that is something that could be recorded for the community, whether it's, again, report outs from committees or some highlights or however that gets put together.
David, if you
Yes.
don't mind.
Neil, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to echo what Kevin was saying, not just Florida state statute, but our dedicatory insurance, we at least at the minimum have to have the meeting to bring in our new directors, and then they at least need their organizational meeting supplementally to decide officers, et cetera. So I'm not trying to kind of smash anybody's creativity right now, but from a structural, organizational, professional, legal perspective, we at least need to insert our new directors for the annual meeting at the minimum. I'm not sure we as the team in town hall yet are prepared to actually speak intelligently to the special event component today. And again, I'm not trying to dismiss anybody, but yeah, I think maybe we can, if we can defer that to give my team and I some time to maybe get a little more creative, I think that'd be better for our homeowners.
And that's what, and I was just going to suggest that, why don't, as we watch our time today and make sure we plan plenty of time for the CCFC, what if we defer that as a workshop item 2 weeks from now, have the management think about what we've been talking about just in these last few minutes. Brian, you had your hand up.
I mean, if you want to defer it, great. Or the other thing we could do is we could actually say that we're going to have a minimalistic annual meeting on March 2nd, 3rd, whatever that day is, and that we're going to have a more robust event of an annual meeting in November at Founders Day. And the reason I like that is we know we're going through the RFP and all these other changes. We would actually have a ton of things to communicate. The timing would be perfect.
Brian, can I actually just make a motion on this?
Yeah.
I'm going to motion that for our annual meeting, we hold it on the date that we had scheduled, which was the 5th, looking at my calendar here. Motion that we continue with having our annual meeting on March the 3rd as a Zoom. And the current date for the organizational meeting is for Friday, February 5th.
March 5th.
Oh, March the 5th. So I will motion that we keep those 2 dates as Zoom meetings. That way we still observe our legal obligation and we give management time, and we don't have to address this again until after. we need to stop kicking things down the path for another 2 weeks and another 3 weeks and all this stuff. So I think if we just say our meeting is going to be the 3rd, the organizational meeting's the 5th, and then at that time they can determine in March or in the new board how they want to handle the official big annual meeting.
That's fine.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second for that?
This is Mary Ann, I'll second.
Good. Okay, any further discussion from the board? Call the question. All in, how individually, Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that passes. Two other quick, thank you for that discussion. 2 other quick updates. One was Spring Lake Gardens landscape update. Just what's the quick update on that? I know we're going to have a further discussion, but what's the update now? Tim, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
There he is.
Prior to the holidays, Brian from Exquisite and we walked Spring Lake to show him the boundaries, and all, certain troubled areas and just get him a feel for the land. His crew started in this last Monday with detailing, little bit of pruning, edging the hard edging the landscape, continuing to go through and check and monitor irrigation as well. And we have our, is what David just said, we have our big walk next week. So that's a brief update.
Involved in the big walk is who, Tim, please? Who's involved?
Brian, I could not hear you.
No, it was David. Who's involved in the walk, Tim?
Say it again.
Who's on the walking?
Oh, sorry. Me, Neil, Susanna, Jessica, and the 3 committee members.
From the committee from?
The garden homes.
From
Yep.
Spring Lake Gardens. Great. Anyone from the board?
No.
But
Tim, what's the day and time of that?
It was on the 14th, I believe at, was it 10 a.m.?
why don't you send information to the board on that, Tim?
Yep.
And we can see if we can have at least one board member there.
Okay.
I think Diane is the service area liaison. So perhaps Diana would be a good person for that.
Yeah, I'd like to try and be there. That's why I wanted to get confirmation of the day and time.
Yeah, it's the 14th at 10 o'clock. And then so what'll happen after that walk is we'll give the committee, a couple days to put their report together, and Tim will kind of join in from a management standpoint, and we'll have a more thorough update at the January 22nd workshop.
Good. Okay, perfect.
Remember that we have requested that every month we're going to have a report.
We have it scheduled every month.
No, we're transitioning right now to maybe January, yes or no, but at least going forward, it's a requirement.
Yeah,
we're going to get some walking done. Yep.
This is a top priority for the board.
Yes.
Last piece, just any update. I don't know if Patrick is on, but on the Microsoft Teams implementation, I know that we were deferring that till the first of the year. Not any details, just what's the big picture? What's the timeline? What's the plan?
Let me help with this actually. Then Patrick.
Good.
We actually had a technology committee meeting the other day. We had a problem in that they actually needed to be paid with a credit card or an ACH. We didn't have the ability to write one of the proper size. So I'm going to work with Neil and Susanna to get that fixed for the future. We've cut a check. We had the domain question thing that was hanging it up. We discussed that quite a bit the other day. We are actually going to get a domain name that will be for only the board committees in town hall. Any individuals or households that had those other domain names, we're going to let that domain lapse, and we're going to tell them they can pay and keep it up or not pay and keep it up. But that way we've divorced this conversation so that we'll have something, Celebration Town Hall or some name that will work so that we can move this forward, get registered properly and have a domain name. I specifically asked them to get all of this stuff resolved before March 1st so that we're going to transition to Teams with the new board on March 2nd, because I figured that would be a clean cutoff. And this will shock all of you, but we had a hiccup or 2 or 3, as you always have when you change systems over the holidays, but that way we have a clean cut. So I'm hoping that's appropriate for everybody.
Good. That's very helpful.
I think that's a great idea.
So the timeline is early March with the new board.
Yep.
And then we can learn more about some of the functionalities. It's more than email. Microsoft Teams does more than the email. It's also document storage and that sort of thing. Right.
Eventually, we will be able to have more and more functionality. We're trying to get the core working. And for example, myself, I have a Gmail account that is Brian for Celebration. I'll be able to, and the rest of you will be able to convert all of your history and your emails to Teams so that you don't lose anything. You've got it in a new system and everything. So, I think the worst case scenarios we'll all just have to learn how to use a new system. But we had a meeting the other day on Teams at 5 o'clock, and at 4:40, I started trying to set up something, and I was able to do it in 15 minutes. And if I can do it in 15, you can all do it in 8.
Very good. Any further discussion on that before we move to big agenda item?
David, Jim Hayes did ask for a quick comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jim.
Jim.
Yeah, I know that we're talking about this as a Teams implementation, and that's probably the most important part of this. But as David mentioned, I just want to emphasize, this is moving to the Office 365 platform, which includes an email that's more like your corporate email, so that we can do things across email administrators can do things across all the emails, such as e-discovery and things like that. And it has the file storage, as David mentioned, both on an individual level that you may want to have that addresses your work for celebration, but also in teams. Probably each committee will have their own team.
Good, good.
And so there's storage there as well for the team. There's also ability to invite people out from the outside to come in and look at some or all of those. You create what are called channels. You can either say they have access to everything or just this channel. So it's a lot of things. As Brian mentioned, we probably may need to phase into getting benefit from all of that. But I just wanted to mention that because I think it's easier to just call it Teams because everyone says Team Zoom, but Teams is more than Zoom, and we're getting more than Teams. So that's it.
Good.
Thanks.
That's very helpful. I was wondering about the committees. That's helpful. Thank you so much, Jim, and thanks for all your work on the committee. Can we move to the agenda item about the CCFC and capital improvements? I think where this started was two different strands. One is let's look at the CCFC and the utilization of the CCFC, the field complex, and the need that we have expressed while we are on hold for any capital improvements, the need, if you will, for pickleball and lawn sports and so forth. So there was that piece, and then we were also looking at drainage issues. I think the board was given a shock months ago when we were talking about a location right next to the dog park for pickleball, and the internal estimate was $250,000. The price came in many times higher than that because of some drainage. So this board commissioned a study of, if you will, the drainage. And so that's part of what we were looking for today. I think that was commissioned maybe 2 months ago, Brian, 3 months ago, ballpark, October. You're muted. Brian is muted.
We discussed it in October and then we said roll forward. So you're right. So we really need Michael now to tell us where he's at with that study. And then I think we need to talk about the rethink a little just so we can start some or two.
And then some next steps. So Mike Henry, your floor is yours.
I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, to give you an update on where we are right now, MBV did have these soil samples taken. They were taken the week of Christmas. The samples were taken. They've been shipped off to Artemin for the testing. They're expecting by today a report back from the testing company of what those results were, with the quality of the soils or what we're dealing with. From that, we're going to have from the engineer David, who's working on this, he's going to need, once he gets those results back today, he's saying between 2 days and a week to have his full report to us. What that report is, I know what everybody's looking for. This report is going to show us what we're dealing with the soil, how we're going to address that to improve the drainage, including retention ponds, what fixes would have to be implemented on the fields 1 and 2, and also with the vacant lots that we have. I know that's where this pickleball came into play and where we got that exorbitant quote for it. We'll get an idea of what would have to be done and what can be built into those places. So we're looking at by Friday the 15th. MBVD said that it's possible it could be before then. And as soon as we get it, of course, that'll be forwarded on to you and see what the next steps would be.
So that report, what we would expect in that report is what it would take to prepare a lot or a space, whether it's a field or a lot B or D, or one of the fields, for various purposes?
Correct. This report, they're going to have 3 options with it. One is, first, let's start with the fields itself. He's going to have options. One option is to put AstroTurf on all 2 of them. Also looking at what we'd have to do to keep the grass and what we have to do with the slope to make that work properly. And then, from that stage, we'll have the options for the AstroTurf if we want to continue with the grass. And then also they're looking at other options with Field 1 on what other facilities or sports can be put there, pickleball, things like that. The next step would be the parking area that we've been using for the events.
Right.
That section there, what would be needed for drainage, and the options would be if we wanted to put a building there, if we wanted to do a park there, what would be needed? Because if you're putting a building, that's different than if you're going to put a park. And also, they're going to be doing the same report to us from the CDD building in between there and the dog park. In that section there, same report. If you want to do a structure, what would be needed, and if not, all the options. So we are expecting that by next Friday.
Okay.
So that'll actually, Michael, let me just restate what I think I heard in layman's terms.
Sure.
We got lot B, which is the one right by the CDD. We got lot D, which is where we've been doing the parking for concerts. We've got the first grass field where we've talked about, I'm going to call it adult sports, whether it's pickleball, whether it's croquet or whatever. And then we got the 2 fields. So we're actually going to have a report that deals with lot B, lot D, the first field, and then the 2 soccer lacrosse fields. So
yes, sir.
That'll be good, and it'll talk about impacts of drainage, retention ponds, and everything. So we're going to have a thorough report, so that's good. Will this report talk about cost estimates, or will it tell us the work that's going to be done, and then we're going to have to figure out what that means from a dollar and cents perspective?
No, this report will have general cost estimates. Of course, until we decide what we want to do, we won't have more specific numbers, but it will give you good ballpark numbers to help make a decision. That will lead us to, I just want to make sure I get all the steps correct. Please bear with me. That will lead us to task 2, where once these options are presented to the board, then we can decide which way we want to go. And that's when they would do the full detailed report. Like if we wanted to go with adult sports on Field 1, if that's what we want to do, then we would get that full report on how to make that happen. Same goes for the fields between CDD and the dog park. Once we decide what we want to do there, that's when we get that full report after the initial recommendation of, okay, you want to build the youth center there, here's what would be needed to get that correct. If you wanted to go with a standard park, here's what would be needed, with costs as well.
Okay, so what you've laid out so far sounds very excellent to me. It would seem to me, and this is a question for the board and for you, Neil, that we ought to have you spend a little bit of time with the pickleball and adult sports coordinator groups to lay out Field 1 so that we can understand, okay, this is what it would actually look like. And what I'm thinking, David, is we can't make a decision that we're going to spend $100,000 or pick any number you want if we don't know what the heck would it look like laid out on the field. So there would be, and since the 15th is 2 weeks off, I believe, roughly, or 1 week maybe by the time 2 weeks by the time we have a meeting, would it be possible to not have a perfect drawing, but to have a sketch? Okay, on this piece of land, we can drop in 4 pickleball courts and 1 croquet, or 12 pickleball courts and 1 croquet. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, and I think that'd be valuable information.
And even just dovetailing that, looking at some options. If you did this, if you did that, some trade-off.
That MBV will be providing the reports on that, and they will have visuals. But I know, going back to what Brian said about the adult sports, I don't think they're going to have, here's a pickleball court, here's this, here's croquet. Yeah. That is something I could work with the committees and kind of get a rough idea. And I have software on the computer to where I could do, basic sketches and outlines so we can get a basic visual of what options could be there.
Right, because
that I could probably do after I get the report from BVD.
And I would find value in that. You could meet with Steve Northridge, Dave. I mean, there's 3 or 4 key players, and I don't think we're looking for a perfect drawing. We may even have drawing A and drawing B, which can be, I could care less if it's paper and crayons. It just gives us an idea this is a feasibility for the land that we're talking about, so we can have a gut feel. I just think that would really help us, David.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot.
Can I step in for just,
Please.
here's my concern. I see the exact same trend happening that that has been going on for quite some time, meaning we keep on, let's get more information, work with this group, let's work with this group. Ultimately, I feel like adding this onto a Friday workshop is going to become counterproductive. I am not a proponent of adding another meeting onto our agenda, just to be very clear on this, but I really feel like in order to get a solid, let's not talk about anything other than what we want to do with our amenities, we really need to have a meeting about just that. What are we going to do with our amenities? It sounds like by January the 13th, we'll have at least the report that gives us some guidelines. That give a couple of weeks to try and maybe we can do this on this core, do we still want to do, just as an example, do we still want to do croquet over on East Lawn? Do we want to, or do we want to move it here? But we need to have those different types of options presented in an open forum so that groups like, I'm going to put it out there because I'm not thinking the soccer wants that one field turned over into a pickleball or into adult fields. We need to have this conversation out in the open and not have to worry about going through all of these other updates before we get to it. So I really feel like we need to schedule in February a meeting, have all the data, as much data as possible regarding our options for different things. We know we want pickleball. We know we want we want croquet in lawn sports. We know we want this or with that. We need to have an open forum for that to happen, and we need to have it with nothing other than this conversation. So I would like to say that we need to have this in early or mid part of February.
It's like a town hall meeting just on this one topic.
Yep.
Okay. Brian?
I don't disagree with what Vanessa just said. I would just like us to make sure we're prepared for the meeting and have pulled together the information, because, it's going to be one thing if we find out if, we know lot B was 1,355,000. I remember the number very well. If we find out we can do it on field 1 for $200,000, that's a humongous difference. And then really we start talking about how we can use these different things, how many dollars we have to spend, and the risk management type thing. Because the other thing that we need to do then when we have that conversation, following up on what Vanessa said, is, we talked about these are no longer soccer fields, but this is an adult park where everybody who's paying in is going to have access for different things. We talked about walking track. We talked about opening it up so people, when the park is open, can come in with a pass key like we do for the pools. So I agree with it. It should be the only thing we discuss in a meeting, but then we open up everything to it and we do the homework like we just talked about with this one item to be prepared for that, because there will be lots of people who want to listen in on this meeting.
Yeah, good. And I think as part of that, it's looking at current utilization. What is the current utilization of the 3 fields and differentiating the one with the artificial turf and the other 2? What is the utilization of tennis courts? What is the utilization of our facilities that we have now? I think that will be helpful as we move forward. Anyone else on the board right now? Because I see Steve has his hand up. Steve, go ahead, please. Steve Northridge. Okay, you're unmuted.
You're mute. There you go.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I've got several points I'd like to bring up. First of which is back in October and September timeframe, there was direction given to the management company from the board to basically go back and look at do a CROA capital improvements analysis. This is looking, basically open up the whole can of worms again, going back and looking at the surveys and looking at all this stuff and determine facilities we have, look across all CROA properties, determine what we can do. Then there was another direction put out to say, we'll look at this rethink. Are both of these things are not necessarily aligned. They're two different paths to go down. Are we going down both paths? Are we going down one path or the other? What is it thinking here? So I mean, I think someone has to step up and say, clarify what is the direction of the board? Are we going down the rethink path? Are we going down the analysis path? There's two different paths that we're going down. Both were directions given to the board, given by the board. The second thing is related to the real cost for Lot B. I heard the number $1.3 million is mentioned. Well, that's certainly true. It includes all the alternatives and all other things, including the alternatives. The number in reality is $743,880 is provided by Arnco, plus $158,000, which is design fees, which were spread across even the alternatives. So it's unclear whether it was allocated. It's hard to break down the numbers, but certainly site costs related to drainage were not identified in this. You have to remember the alternatives included things like including dog park and pickleball lighting, restrooms, pavilions, 3 additional courts beyond the additional 9. So if you look at the basic requirements of the 9 courts, even the Arnco bid, which is higher than the McCree bid, which are not apples and apples, it was $700 and some thousand plus design fees. The fees associated with McCree were a little bit lower. They included a 983 bid, but it was not broken down in any rational way you could deal with it. But it looks like what they identified as a playground, which the pickleball equipment would have been about $487,000, but it's not clear where the rest of it was. The bottom line is these bids were not even analyzed, looked at, or going through any kind of scope reduction or any kind of things like that. You could, for instance, right off the bat, say we don't need to put parking right there. There's plenty of parking at the dog park, and we could defer parking at Lot B if we wanted to use the parking that's available at the dog park. We could also park parallel along the road. This is certainly being done at the CDD building. So that could be deferred. I don't know what those cost savings will be, but these kind of things, we're looking at these things at a very high level, and some analysis has to be done on these bids, look at the scope of work that's being requested to determine what the real costs are, what the expenditures are. So when we throw around numbers that are very high, it scares people, but the numbers are not necessarily as bad as it looks. Obviously, they're much higher than I would like, and we should question them. But I think we should question. That's the point. There's been no analysis on this, and I understand why. Went through the COVID thing, and this is put on the back burner and all that. That's great. That's fine. But I think we should decide what we're doing. Are we doing the rethink? Are we doing the CROA analysis or what all that stuff? We got to make a decision on which path we're going down. The third issue, which is very concerning to me.
You're at 3 minutes. You're over 3 minutes, Steve.
Okay.
So can you do that in 10 seconds?
The delays from the work that's been for the water is unacceptable. And we went through, this has been pushed since October, and now we're in December. It was specifically requested the report be back in time for the January meeting. It's not here. Now we're extending the scope of what's being asked for, and it's really getting kind of concerning, because by July 1, we'll never be ready to do anything because there's not been enough work and analysis and planning to move forward. And it's very disappointing to see this continual delay. We're now a year past the approval to move the green light of the pickleball courts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll echo. I don't know about the other board members. I'm disappointed we don't see a report now, but we don't have that.
I'm not sure that we can necessarily blame. I think we've all, I know I personally have had work tried to get done here, but have had delays because of different circumstances. COVID has not been easy. I'm not making excuses. I'm just stating a fact. We don't have control over all that. But I do think that a reset, that how do we reset, how do we rethink this, does mean that we have to make sure we have all the data, Steve. I think it's both. We can't change things till we have all of the data in.
I agree that it's both, and I also appreciate a lot of what Steve said, breaking down the numbers. The dog park itself has been waiting for lights for years. Lights was an option. So pickleball lights is an add-on. So we can look at various options. Some things are cheaper to do when you do it all at once, but we also have a philosophy of having the money before we move forward.
All right, David, can I jump in and answer?
Absolutely.
So last year I was the president. So I remember distinctly that when we started down this path, it was going to be $200,000 to build the field. And at $1,355,000, it was such a huge multiple of $200,000 that it didn't matter. And Steve Waring had a conversation with McCree, and McCree told him $750,000 for drainage. So that's where it came from. It actually came from McCree. with the wisdom of an additional year, we went to the rethink. I believe, and the board discussed it in October, and I think the board is supportive of the rethink. That led to the statement that we needed to actually analyze the drainage issue, because we learned about drainage concerns over the summer with the two grass fields that we did not have before in B and D. So we are very much trying to look at all of it together in a time frame that settles it, because we've spent money in the past. You can argue the wisdom of that expenditure if it was done too darn quick without proper analysis. So that's what's really led us there.
Okay. So where to from here? We have 10 minutes left on our meeting. We still have to discuss our workshop priorities, at least for the next workshop 2 weeks from now.
David, I'd like to motion that we schedule a meeting for the conversation in February.
Okay.
Anybody want to throw a date out there? I don't care.
We'll just have management solicit some dates early February, ideally.
Yeah, I'll second the motion to schedule the meeting, and yeah, I would leave the scheduling logistics to management.
Yeah, perhaps management can look at, poll the board and just make sure of full board availability, or at least maximize that.
Sure, we have 2 workshops already scheduled in February. We'll look at what's free, and if we have to do a 3rd one, we can.
I think we're actually looking at some different meeting rather than the workshop. So this.
And if I could, maybe we should consider this workshop being in the evening, David, so more residents can participate.
Okay.
So we used to have one, for example, it's still on my calendar, even though we used to have one on February 1st. It's from 6 to 8. We can pick a different date. I don't care about the date. But if we did a workshop from 6 to 8 that was solely going to be on this, residents that work could more easily attend, and then they could hear what's going on. And I would like to request that we spend enough time that we put a package out there that all the residents can review it. Steve's questions are perfectly fair, and other people are going to have. Let's get the package in front of people, including what we learned from the study and anything else we do, so that everybody's dealing with the same information and there's no hidden anything.
So we'll have management pull that together. We'll see a report within a week, per what Mike said, and then I'll work with management about getting a date set and floating that to the board, or some options for the date. We'll look at an evening.
And then we do try to need to make sure that the committees are engaged in this too, just as an.
So let's get that scheduled. Perhaps we can get a schedule by the middle of next week.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Okay, great. I'll work with you, Susanna.
Sounds great.
Steve, your hand is still up. Can we, anything urgent for this? Oh, your hand is now down. Okay.
No, I didn't lower my hand.
That's okay. No, I just saw it pop back up.
No, I did have further, this $750,000 for site work is not reflected in any of the bids, so I don't. McCree verbally gave a $750,000 site work in addition. It certainly was not in their bid, and if their bid was total of $983,000, their site work line item was $66,450. So if McCree says there's another $750,000 of site work on Lot B, they were willing to bid the job at $983. So I'm not sure why they would do that. So there's some incongruencies here that I don't understand. And also, I think when you talk about the analysis being done, there was a specific direction provided to the board about analysis of all the facilities and all the things that are going to go on. That's separate and apart from this rethink. So the point is the board rescinded that direction to management or not? Is the management still being directed to do that? And has there been any output from that activity, which was directed in September?
Okay, so I think that is still a directive to management to look at the whole rethink.
No, the rethink is a separate issue. The rethink is one thing, the specific direction on looking at all properties available in Celebration. This is a written up report that CROA provided in September to the board, told CCMC, look at all this, everything we have. And if since September, has anything been produced from this report? If it was management given a direction to rescind that and go down the separate path, which is identified as the rethink?
To my knowledge, that has not been rescinded. Vanessa, any thoughts?
No, it hasn't been rescinded. I think that right now the management only has so much time on their hands, to be fair. Okay. So I think that right now their focus has been, let's get this, let's figure out what we've got going on. So I think that it hasn't been rescinded, but again, you still only have so much time in the day and the holidays. But on that note, we have like 4 minutes left.
Yes, we do.
And we are going to schedule a meeting. I don't know that we have an exact answer for you, Steve, but we'll look into it and we'll figure it out and we'll find out where we're at from there. That's my suggestion.
Yes. So our last item is for next workshop. We have circulated a dozen or more items as potential topics. Rather than prioritize all of those, what jumps out that we must address 2 weeks from today? And what else could we direct management or some other process to address in the next 2 weeks? I know that from today, we have an annual meeting update, which we will discuss. What else is important from our list of topics to schedule for future workshops do we want to prioritize for 2 weeks from today?
David, does the contract for the sanitation need to be discussed at that point? Or are we going to do that is that the right timing for that?
That's a good question. What's the timing for that? I know that they wanted something resolved by December. We waited till the first of the year to do that. And that's
And they were going to bring in visitors.
Susanna, I think you and I had exchanged some emails regarding this. You want to share?
Yes, so already scheduled for the January 22nd workshop is obviously the Spring Lake Gardens update. We have the street tree guidelines. We had celebration sanitation and the recycling representative talking about that. And that was also discussion about the contract and rebidding it out. Election annual meeting. There is a brief update for electric car charging stations and discussion about a town hall meeting with CCDD.
Do we really need another update on the annual meeting though? I thought we just determined that we have just the one. Sorry.
Can I make a suggestion?
Management was going to look at that.
These brief updates are taking way too long. Why can't we just have management write a brief update, send it to the board, and if the board members have a question, we discuss it. Otherwise, that gets done.
Let's do that.
We have to get the street trees discussed because we're talking about it with CDD. We need to talk about the sanitation contract renewal. Those two things matter.
Why don't we put those on the agenda for 2 weeks from today?
Okay.
And then we'll look at the other items for later because we have February workshops. But those are the two ones, and then management can update with the others.
And Susanna, make sure you add investment guidelines to this list because we got to do that in February.
Right.
Okay.
That's something Brian had done a few months ago and just recirculated today, I think.
And then I also had in February, perhaps scheduling a workshop on just the RFP.
No.
Nope, don't need to do that anymore. Okay. Sounds good.
And we have the full list of other things that we may want to get to or not.
Okay.
But those are the big ones: sanitation and tree design guidelines.
And Spring Lake. Yep.
And Spring Lake is an update. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? We have 1 minute left.
A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Vanessa, thank you for everything. And we will.
Thank you all for your support. I appreciate it very much.
All in favor?
I'll second that motion.
Aye. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Have a wonderful weekend.
You as well.